It is Wednesday, August 3rd here in Draft Shark Studios in Rochester, New York. Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Matt Schauf. With me, as always, is Jared Smola. And joining us now to keep the Beat Writer series rolling is a co-host of the Barking Browns show, which you can find on the Network 216 YouTube channel and many other places. He is at Karnsies817 on Twitter. He is Nick Karns. Nick, thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Absolutely. You know what? Anytime I get an excuse to talk Browns, that's a good day. So I'm happy to be here, and I can't wait to get going.
That's exactly what we're looking for. Before we do get to our Browns questions, though, tell us a little bit about this Barking Browns show.
Okay, so I do it with two of my best friends now, Jacob Roach and Ed in Columbus, and the three of us started a little over a year ago now, and you know what? It was right after the 2020 draft, and we just started breaking down prospects, and then we had the opportunity to go to camp. And so this is kind of like the second year of really, making that kind of just talking Browns every week and all of that. So it's been a really good time. And we actually had the chance to go to camp together on Saturday. And then we did like a post show. And it's just there's a lot of the Browns are certainly a team that there's a lot of opinions on right now. But if you are, regardless of where you come out on that, if you are doing Brown stuff, it's popular, right? So there's a lot of interest there, and we have a lot of fun talking every week. And yeah, that's Sorry, my words are stumbling over this morning. The coffee's still kicking in. But it's been a great time, and we're just looking to do more. And so here we are.
Yeah, the Browns are definitely interesting, if nothing else. And we were talking before the show about how you guys have been out at practice every day so far. So looking at this year's Browns, last year we got the 20th ranked offense in neutral pass rate, obviously been a run-leaning offense since Kevin Stefanski arrived, and we expected that going in. But with Deshaun Watson, and now that we know he's going to be on the field for 11 of the 17 games, barring injury, of course, do you expect that this team will go significantly further toward the pass, or should we expect something similar in terms of run-pass breakdown to what we've seen the past 2 years?
I do think, you know what, a hallmark thing that a lot of the players have said about the Kevin Stefanski offense is that he looks to utilize the skills that he has. And I just think with Deshaun Watson and the last time he played, he led the league in passing. It would shock me if we didn't see a significant increase in their neutral pass rate, just because that's such a talent upgrade at the position. And you can see it in camp that they're putting in different sets of packages offensively, and they're trying different things that they didn't use as much with Baker Mayfield, because when he came in, there were all these stats that were talking about, well, if you keep Baker's pass attempts down and just let him flow within the offense, that's the Browns' best path to success. And a lot of the numbers showed that. But I think with Deshaun, he's just been statistically and on the field so much far of a superior passer. With the Browns adding Amari Cooper and Donovan Peoples-Jones looking to take a step, there's a lot of encouraging signs in camp, especially they just extended David Njoku. So I would imagine that we will see a pretty big increase there.
Yeah, certainly from our angle, it's like, why would you spend so much money on all these passing game pieces if you're going to keep, running the ball 45% of the time?
Mm-hmm.
How has Jacoby Brissett looked in camp? And is he getting run with the first team offense and preparation for those first 6 games?
Yeah, you know what? We had the pleasure to have our own Cameron Justice on yesterday. She works for Channel 5 here, and one of the things that she noted that surprised her is just how many reps Jacoby Brissett's been getting with the ones. She said it's been about a 50-50 split, and I noticed that as well. That in past years, like, it was a lot of, obviously it's a lot of Baker Mayfield, but it's been a big question. How are the Browns going to handle this? What because they have to install an offense, but you have to get both quarterbacks comfortable, and even more to a further extent, Josh Dobbs has been getting reps as well, because for the first 6 games at least he's your number 2. But you know what, Jacoby Brissett has looked like a guy that is just he's he's not taking risks on the field so much. Like you can tell, like Deshaun Watson, he'll try and fit the ball in the narrow windows and that kind of thing. Whereas Jacoby Brissett seems to favor the middle of the field in drills, but he's not turning it over, right? I haven't seen camp interceptions from him, and his play. Miami was rough, but if you go back to when he was a full-time starter in Indianapolis, he threw less than half the interceptions that Baker Mayfield did last year for the Browns. And I know that's a little. We're talking about a couple of years, but my point is he's going to protect the ball, and I think you see that in camp where he's taking a lot of throws that are a little safer. But the Browns last year had a lot of games come down to one possession, and so I think Jacoby protecting the ball more is going to be very beneficial to what, because they're a talented team, right? I don't think they need a huge edge from the quarterback in the early part of the year because the schedule's a little softer. But he's looked very. Honestly, I've been impressed.
He'll be working behind a much better O-line in Cleveland than he did in Miami last year, which will definitely help that. A couple questions on the Browns backfield. First, do you expect both Kareem Hunt and Dearness Johnson to be on this roster when week 1 rolls around? I mean, both guys have been subject of, trade rumors, Johnson, especially lately. And then how do you expect the backfield touches to be split this year? Do you think it's going to be similar with, Chubb kind of leading the way, but Hunt also playing a big role? Do you expect Johnson to, be in the mix on a weekly basis if he is on the roster come week 1?
It's a lot of good questions. I'd like to start. So Kevin Stefanski kind of teased us a couple of years ago by putting both Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb in the backfield at the same time. And we thought we were going to see a lot of packages with 2 running backs on the field at the same time and that kind of utilization. And it never really transferred onto the field. And I think there were a lot of questions about why that was. So something that a lot of people have picked up on early in camp is that we're seeing a lot of formations with 2 backs on the field at the same time, which everybody's excited about. So to answer your question, I do believe that we're doing final roster predictions. And when I looked at the running back room, I picked Chubb, Hunt, Dearness Johnson, and new draft pick out of Cincinnati, Jerome Ford, to make the roster, with Demetric Felton being the odd man out. I do think that they're going to keep those 4 running backs going into the season. If for nothing else, I don't think you're going to pass. You're going to lean on the pass with Jacoby Brissett like you would with Deshaun Watson. So from that perspective, I think it makes a lot of sense that the Browns, to me, have the best running back room in the NFL. So leaning on that room, leaning on that strength makes a lot of sense, especially through the first 6 games. So for that reason, I definitely think that those 4 backs will be kept. And you know what? I'm not sure about. So Dearness Johnson has he was one of the most elusive backs in the NFL last year, at creating missed tackles. And in Denver, he was the star of the show on Thursday night. I think he had 147 yards rushing and was really good for the Browns against the Broncos. I don't know how often Johnson will get touches if Chubb and Hunt are in front of him, but I will say that one of the harder parts for the Browns recently is that both Chubb and Hunt have dealt with their own injuries at various times. So I definitely think Dearness will see the field, but if Chubb and Hunt are healthy, it's probably. I mean, there's only so many carries to go around, right? But you know what? I will say that if they continue using this 2-back system during the season, because we thought we were going to see that, we'll probably see a lot more, right? Because then if you have them on the field at the same time, there's more opportunities for that to happen.
And certainly they're well positioned to, if another team suffers an injury and comes calling for a running back, then, I mean, they can certainly listen to offers for either Hunt or Johnson and know that they don't need to get rid of either of those backs.
You know what? It's like they could definitely get a return. I'm sure that, and running backs are the most oft injured of any, right? But what Kareem and Dearness provide to the Browns, I don't think that the value they could get in a trade would replace the value that they provide on the field, just because the running back position is so devalued when it comes to trade. So because we've discussed this at length, we're like, well, it does make sense. Obviously the Browns have a huge depth there and they could trade away from a position of strength, but they are so good on the field. I don't think the draft pick that they would get in return is equal in value to what the Browns could have just out on the field.
Yeah, especially Johnson still being on that rookie deal.
Yeah.
He's so cheap, so that's kind of another reason to maybe hang on to him. The wide receiver group, I think, we all expect Amari Cooper to be the clear one after the Browns swung that trade for him. How do you think it's going to shake out behind him with Donovan Peoples-Jones, rookie David Bell, Anthony Schwartz? How do you expect that group to kind of play out?
So this is probably the most difficult room to project because both Anthony Schwartz and David Bell haven't been practicing, right? So Amari Cooper, they have been treating Amari Cooper like a number one wide receiver. Of course they are. But the note to me is that Amari has looked like him and Greg Newsome, because Denzel Ward is also banged up and not practicing. So it's basically been Amari versus Greg Newsome lining up over each other. And they've both kind of taken turns getting the best of each other, which it's been a really fun camp battle to watch. But so I just want to say, I believe in Donovan Peoples-Jones. So he's been out there. I haven't seen as much of him. I'm not sure why that is, because there have been positive reports. Just personally, I just haven't seen it. But regardless, I think Donovan Peoples-Jones will be your wide receiver too. He did lead the Browns in receiving last year. There was for a while it was David Njoku, but so he's taller than a lot of the guys in that room, and I feel like he brings a skill set that is more unique to him than the other guys do. But I will say, so with Schwartz and David Bell, I have high hopes, but we just haven't seen it yet.
Right.
But that has actually lent opportunities to Mike Woods out of Oklahoma, who has, by all accounts, and I was watching it yesterday, he just keeps making catches. I think, shout out to him for taking advantage of the opportunities he's getting that he may not have, right, if Schwartz and Bell were on the field. And so I have high hopes for him. And I think really at this point, it's just Schwartz and Bell got to get on the field so we can start getting some clarity in that room.
Mike Woods is a great name to get out there, especially for folks who want to play that preseason DFS, because I certainly have not heard Mike Woods' name floating around. And, the great thing from a fantasy standpoint with DPJ is that he's lasting until the very end of draft, so people don't have to invest to see what happens, to just bet on the talent and, let it play out. Of course, Amari Cooper's got his own injury now that we have to wait and see how long it's going to be. It doesn't sound like it's serious, but I know he's not practicing today at least.
He was down for like 30 seconds. Like they were doing red zone drills, and he caught a touchdown, and so everybody's happy, right? And then he doesn't get back up, and so we're all just kind of looking, and it's just like this uneasy silence. Trainer goes over to him. He did get up. He didn't look like it. Whatever happened to him felt good, but he walked off and looked okay. So we held our breath for a second, and so we'll hopefully it looks like he's okay.
Yeah, you should probably get used to holding your breath when it comes to Cooper. It seems like every other game he's hobbling off at some point. He usually comes back, but that's kind of a common occurrence with Amari.
It's so weird, right? Like, I looked up the stats, and I believe he's missed 3 games in the last 3 years. But it feels like, and I'm an avid fantasy player, and I've had him, and he's always dealing with. There's always a question, questionable for this week because he's dealing with an ankle or a hamstring or something. And kudos to him because obviously he goes through it, right? But I agree. There definitely always seems to be something nagging there.
Mm-hmm. The nagging thing with David Njoku the past few years has been, when is he going to follow up on that early career promise? When is he going to break out? The Browns, of course, made the move this year. They franchised him first, then they extended him. They got rid of Austin Hooper. Are we finally going to get the David Njoku breakout season that we've been waiting for this year?
You know what? I think all the time about how the Browns had Darren Fells at tight end, and he was okay for them, but he went down to Houston with Deshaun Watson, and he caught 4 touchdowns for them that year, and was just like a solid, reasonable tight end. But when he played with the Browns, he wasn't nearly as good as he was with Watson. And so I think about how Watson helped Fells elevate his play, and we've all been waiting for the David Njoku breakout, because you look at the guy, and especially he just stands head and shoulders above everybody else in the tight end room. He's just bigger and he's jacked. The guy is a freak physically. And so if I had to bet on any year that David Njoku could put it all together, I think it's this one. I just Deshaun Watson, he there's definitely a connection there. Him and Njoku, he throws to him all the time, and it's good to see. He did, you know what? He did drop a great touchdown in the end zone the other day, and everybody kind of had a collective groan because that's his bugaboo. So I know he's working through that, but I'm just going to bet on the dude who is faster and bigger and stronger than everybody else around him.
Yeah, and it certainly seems like the Browns are betting on that guy as well. How big a role should we expect for Harrison Bryant? Are we going to see as much two tight end as we have previously? Is he a guy that we should kind of think about in those questions of who's going to fill out this wide receiver core? Even though he's a tight end, is he going to factor into that area?
Well, you know what? So that's another thing that's really interesting, because behind Harrison Bryant, there's like our fullback / tight end Johnny Stanton has been playing tight end 3. So really, honestly, like Harrison Bryant is yes, he's tight end 2, but there's nothing really behind him that is on that level. So I could see them, especially with the way the Browns are dealing with wide receiver injuries right now, that would make a lot of sense. And they've been using 2 tight end sets for a long time. I've liked what I've seen from Harrison Bryant. But you know what? Before, it's harder because you mentioned we got rid of Austin Hooper, and so they were in this like weird 3 tight end rotation, and so all the guys kind of got limited opportunities. So I definitely could see Bryant stepping into that role where he's getting more shots and he's getting more opportunities. And if the wide receiver room doesn't shake itself out the way that we're hoping, all the more reason that Bryant could be a contributor. It's a pretty good one.
Mm-hmm. I always like to wrap these up with defense questions. And honestly, just looking at the Browns depth chart on defense, it's one of the clearer pictures for me. So there's not that much I'm worrying about. I think that my primary question when it comes to Browns defenders is there any reason that I should temper my excitement for Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah?
No, there isn't. You know what? He picked off Deshaun Watson the other day, and the defense was really excited about it. And I think when he was on the field last year, because he did deal with a little bit of injuries, he was great. He was, the Browns had this when they brought Joe Woods and this whole new regime in, they had this big push to say we need to get faster. We need to, because we had every time the Browns played Lamar Jackson, he would just cook us because they had no side to side speed from the linebacker position. And so they started that with Jacob Phillips, and we haven't seen that with him yet. Like, we know the abilities there, but with JOK, he came in last year and was fantastic. He did a little bit of everything. He had a few different batted balls, sacks, and he also was a guy who was a very solid coverage linebacker. And I think they've been looking for that hybrid guy, a modern NFL linebacker, if you will, that can do both with stopping the run and coverage. And I think JOK is that guy. I could very much see him being the heart of the defense this year. He seems to do everything well. And I don't know how the Browns got him in the second round. I'm really excited for his year 2. And I think the Browns are as well.
Yeah, the guy's got IDP breakout just like tattooed on his forehead right now. So I'm excited. Is there, do you expect any other linebacker to join him at near full playing time, or are we looking probably at more like a 60 to 65% playing time for that number 2 guy? And in that case, would it be Anthony Walker? Would it be Jacob Phillips or somebody else?
You know what? So the Browns took Jacob Phillips in the 3rd round of Andrew Berry's first draft. And when he has been on the field, he's been really good. The problem is he just hasn't been on the field very often. So towards the end of last year, Phillips got back on the field and performed really well. I believe it was against Cincinnati, the final game of the year. He was also good against Green Bay on Christmas. So he definitely ended the year on a high note. And I think they drafted Jacob Phillips before JOK to be the role, to be a very similar role, because they're similar players in that they both have that hybrid type of linebacker play. And I think ideally, if the Browns had it their way, it would be Jacob Phillips and JOK as much as humanly possible, because they both fit that vision of versatility on defense that the Browns have been seeking since they started building when Andrew Berry came in.
Do you think they'd favor having those two guys on the field over like three safeties with Grant Delpit, John Johnson, and Rodney Harrison?
That's such a good question.
Oh, thank you.
There's so many ways this defense can go, and because Grant Delpit has looked really good in his own right, because you keep in mind last year was his first year off of the Achilles injury, and he was basically robbed of all of camp, and that's one of those injuries that not everybody's Cam Akers, right? And just somehow superhumanly coming back from Achilles tears like they're nothing. So I have such high hopes for Delpit, and John Johnson seems to, he had some weird usage last year that so I feel like his play fluctuated with it. If I had to guess,
yeah, that's all we're doing right now is educated guesses.
You know what? I have high hopes for everybody, but if I had to say, I think Ronnie Harrison is the guy that maybe is a step under Grant, John Johnson, JOK, and Jacob Phillips. So if I had to guess, I think Harrison's the odd man out there in what they would prefer.
I appreciate that. And of course, I showed my age by saying Rodney Harrison instead of Ronnie Harrison, but close enough. I think people know who I'm talking about. If they look at the roster, they'll realize, oh, the guy just added consonants here. Nick Karns, thank you very much for joining us today and giving us your insight. Tell people how to find your stuff and what to look for from your shows.
Okay, I just want to say thank you to both of you. This is like my favorite thing to talk about, and so you giving me this opportunity to share what I'm going in and watching camp. I love that. So thank you to you both. And so I am at Carnsies 817 on Twitter. We are presented by Network 216, and we, as we mentioned, we do the Barking Brown Show. We're live every Tuesday at 8 on Twitch, and we all of our past stuff is on YouTube. And if you like the Browns, if you like, or you're just looking for insight, we love to talk about it. We'll share everything that we find with you. And so I'm going to go to camp today and just, keep watching until I got some more to share. So that's where you can find me. And I this has been great. Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. Anytime. Yeah. So check them out. Even if you don't like the Browns, even if you just want some fantasy insight, you're wondering more about this Mike Woods character.
Yeah.
Check out Barking Browns. This has been episode 7 of our Beat Writer series. Find everyone on our YouTube channel, on Spotify, on Apple, and everywhere else that you like to get your podcast. You can also find every episode of the podcast on draftsharks.com, where you can become a DS Insider to access all of our exclusive content, plus our league-crushing, fully customizable draft war room. For our guest, Nick Karns, for Jared Small and the entire Draft Sharks crew, I'm Matt Shaw saying thanks so much for swimming with us.